Europe's single market brought down trade barriers. It also ensures freedom of movement. 2.8% of Europeans now live and work in other EU countries. Most of them are of working age. Only a small minority are students and retired people. The single market also means freedom of movement for goods, services and capital, increasing EU GDP by 2 to 3%. These freedoms have increased exports and foreign direct investment. Businesses operating in the EU can now access 500 million EU consumers. It's the world's largest free trade bloc and accounts for 20% of the world's GDP. This makes EU companies globally competitive and they can hire the skilled labour they need from across Europe. But barriers, including administrative obstacles and lack of enforcement, still remain.
Tough economic times in Europe have led to heated debates about the more than 14 million European migrants. Who are they, and do they move for jobs or for benefits? The most talked about, of course, are the Romanians and Bulgarians, the bulk of whom live in Italy, Spain and Germany, with only 5% living in the UK, where the topic is the hottest. So Gianni Maggi takes a look at some of the issues from a slightly different perspective.
In the UK, the debate rages about EU migration, which is said to be up 149,000 in 2012 to 209,000 in 2013. Andrzej Dawczyk is one of them. Highly skilled with an international background, having worked in the US, he now flies between offices in Amsterdam and London. He's Bulgarian, and they, along with Romanians, are often suspected of being benefit scroungers.
I think perceptions differ, and they're often influenced by the media. I think on one end of the spectrum, people think that Bulgarians and Romanians come here, steal the benefits and go back home. On the other end of the spectrum, people really value diversity. We work hard, and hey, this is the opportunity the European Union gives, right? This is one of, I guess, the founding philosophies of it.
The mobility of EU workers has increased significantly since 2010 after a sharp decline during the economic crisis. Southern European countries are seeing a real exodus. Most people who migrate to find work are young and well educated, but this brain drain creates problems in their home countries.
Un fenomeno che provoca problemi nei rispettivi paesi di provenienza.
What is the impact of skilled migration on both home and host countries?
When we look at the effect of skilled migration on the labor market prospects of natives, contrary to very standard economic theory, which would predict that natives would actually be harmed, in reality we found not much of an effect. There's a cost for descending countries, especially if they invest in education.
So opportunities in London mean a brain drain in Bulgaria. But people like Andrzej could help create opportunities when and if they eventually return to their home countries.
Young migrants like Andrzej repatriate funds and contribute to economic growth. 3.2% of GDP in Romania and 4.1% in Bulgaria, for example. Data also shows they have a higher tendency to be employed in the recipient countries. I caught up with Laszlo Andor, EU Commissioner for Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion, and asked him what the missing part of the puzzle was, considering the backlash against what is a fundamental EU freedom.
Since the EU has become more uneven by bringing in some of the eastern member states, there's more people who want to take advantage of this freedom. It helps to overcome the imbalances of the European labour market in the times when there is a great demand for labour in some countries like Germany or Sweden, and high number of unemployed people in other countries like Greece or Spain, for example.
When you talk about that, you can't avoid benefit immigration. What do you make of the current scenario, especially, say, in countries like the UK and even Germany now saying they're a little bit worried?
If people move from one country to another, it has been widely proven that they go to work. Benefits, social security systems, welfare states play very little role. Sweden or Denmark have much higher standards of welfare provision than the UK. Nevertheless, the United Kingdom, together with Germany, are now the two countries which receive the big majority. In some countries, there might be a gap between the reality and the perception of labor mobility, especially what concerns the role of benefits. So if some major problem is demonstrated, of course the member states can work together in order to eliminate the loopholes that allow for abusing the benefit systems.
But do we need either change in legislation or need renegotiation if economic performance is different, social security systems are completely different?
The public employment services can provide a greater visibility of the existing vacancies, which means that if people actually want to work in another country, they know before even leaving the home environment what kind of vacancies under what conditions are waiting for them. There is a need for a certain degree of legislation or at least the coordination of the social security systems. The EU has to ensure that if you go from one country to another to work, you don't lose a part of your pensions, but it remains, so to speak, portable. So when you retire, you can draw from the pension systems of various countries in proportion to the time you had spent in those countries.
Are we talking about somehow getting the social security systems of all of the EU countries to be coordinated then?
Well, for all this you don't need to harmonize social security. The available allocations of the European Social Fund in the EU budget are, in my view, sufficient. Even if you would like to see greater harmony, you cannot micromanage the system. It has to be a decision should be able to hire from other countries if they wish so. There should be no obstacle to that.
When you look at the reaction to freedom of movement of people versus freedom of movement of capital, do you think that companies are less personal to people?
Some countries tend to be source countries for emigration, but they are receivers of capital. And of course, in some countries, there are questions about too much dominance of foreign capital in their own land. People may believe that foreign investors, foreign companies, foreign entrepreneurs are crowding out the domestic ones. Always all this needs to be put into the broader context. I think the asymmetries among the European countries would be more disproportionate if we would prohibit one or other freedom to apply to another country. We would create first class and second class.
A relaxed corporate tax regime, 16% here in Romania compared to 29.5% in Germany, means companies exercising their right to freedom of movement, coming here and creating jobs. The EU then finds itself the home of 70% of Romania's exports. Germany and Italy are its biggest trading partners, and as Gianni Maggi explains, their companies are coming here not just for its key position on the Black Sea, but also for its cheaper yet skilled labor force.
Over the years, Romania's become Italy's laboratory for internationalization. Companies from all sectors have set up shop in Romania to take advantage of the country's enviable geographic location. Autotosto has 450 employees and manufactures large components for power plants. Romania adds capacity to its portfolio of 7 Italian factories.
This plant was one of Romania's flagship industrial factories 30 years ago. Today it's part of a European group that competes with global giants in the industry.
Autotosto bought the plant in Bucharest 2 years ago, and it's now being renovated.
We decided to invest in Romania where, with this labour force, we can be slightly more competitive. Having the opportunity to work here, make other different products than those that we make in Italy, goes even further towards supporting the Italian factories.
This group exports products to over 50 countries worldwide. The Romanian plant currently manufactures components for the US market and for a nuclear fusion reactor in France. From high-tech to high fashion, the Romanian international industrial journey takes us to Buzău, 100 kilometers north of Bucharest, where Italian fashion may not be on a runway, but it's definitely moving the economy. My while Tele-Europe has annual revenues of 55 million euros, employs 2,000 people, and their Romanian operation is where some of their most expensive garments are finished. Jeans are painstakingly ripped, creased, discoloured and faded here by hundreds of Romanian workers, mostly women. Precision is important, so the designs are standardized. Every hole, every wrinkle is measured and replicated in the same model of jeans. To be cost-effective, this expertise is usually sourced in cheaper labour markets like China. But Romania's lower-cost skilled labour force means companies can remain within Europe.
There is a return to the physical products, the actual products, the real and visible economy. I think it's a process which has already started and will remain in these countries and will definitely also return in Italy because it's part of our own cultural background.
Closing the gaps in the single markets, drivers and honing in on the solutions together, a moving Europe can be the driver for the real economy. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.